Hey, one Chicago fan. Can we just talk for a minute about how awesome it is when our favorite shows collide? There's just something extra special about seeing the worlds of Chicago Fire, Chicago PD, and Chicago Med come together. We've seen some epic crossovers in the past, with characters from Firehouse 51 rubbing shoulders with the brave folks at District 21 and the dedicated team at Gaffney. Remember that second crossover that even linked us to Law and Order, SVU? The possibilities are endless. Honestly, sometimes it feels a little weird when Chicago Fire doesn't lean into those crossover opportunities. Think about it. Severide's work with the Office of Fire Investigation, OFI, often throws him into situations that practically scream for police involvement. But hey, we get it. Bringing in talent from other shows means juggling budgets and schedules. Even the Chicago Fire Season 13 final, with its intense investigation, managed to wrap up without the Chicago PD crew stepping in, though, to be fair, intelligence had their own hands full. But hold on to your helmets, because one Chicago Fire actor has some seriously exciting crossover dreams, and honestly, we're totally here for them. Jocelyn Hudon's Chicago PD crossover dream. Novak front and center. Our very own Lizzie Novak, played by the fantastic Jocelyn Hudon, might be a newer face at Firehouse 51, but it seems her taste of the one Chicago crossover action in 2025 has left her wanting more. She got to work alongside fellow franchise newcomer John Frost, and Hudon even playfully imagined a Chicago Fire and Med crossover romance. But when it came to Chicago PD, Novak didn't really get to interact with the team in a big way, certainly not like characters such as Mouch and Stella did. Well, get ready, because Jocelyn Hudon's Chicago PD crossover ideas would put Novak right in the thick of it, in a much more substantial, action-packed role. How cool is that? Hudon's enthusiasm for getting involved totally mirrors Lizzie's spirited personality, which is super charming. But here's the thing. She's also onto a really fresh idea. Most of the crossovers we've seen between Chicago Fire and Chicago PD have centered around things like explosive situations and suspicious fires, scenarios that definitely call for AMBO 61's help, but don't necessarily put them at the forefront of the investigation. Imagine a crossover that puts Violet and Lizzie in the spotlight. That would be such satisfying new territory to explore. And guess what? A Chicago Fire Season 13 episode actually got pretty close to delivering on that exact premise. Chicago Fire Season 13 almost gave AMBO 61 a big case, but where was Novak? Remember that intense storyline for AMBO 61 late in Chicago Fire Season 13, in Episode 19. Violet and Lizzie made a shocking discovery. A patient who had been left to die after a botched emergency procedure by a rogue paramedic. With a little help from District 21, Mikami was able to track down the culprit and stop him from putting more lives at risk. Now, it would be fascinating to hear Hudon's take on this story, especially on the One Chicago podcast, because even though Lizzie was on the initial call that kicked off the investigation, she didn't really get the active investigation plotline she's hoping for. Instead, Lizzie spent most of that episode trying to convince Ritter to let her move in with him. Violet, with some help from Carver, largely led the charge in investigating the rogue paramedic. Novak remained on the sidelines, a storytelling choice that clearly aimed to give that complicated couple some much-needed one-on-one time to work through their relationship after Carver's recent absence. While this particular investigation might not have given Novak the adrenaline-fueled story Hudon wants, it absolutely serves as a blueprint for how her dream Chicago PD crossover could be framed. How Chicago Fire Season 14 can make Novak's PD team-up happen. Good news for Novak fans. With Carver and Violet's Chicago Fire romance likely taking a backseat after Jake Lockett's exit, Novak won't be sidelined to make room for Sam anymore. This opens up so many possibilities. The general idea of AMBO 61 discovering a series of victims could easily set up a Chicago PD crossover. and to get Novak right in the middle of the action. All it would take is for her and Violet to run into the culprits before District 21 can secure the scene. Can you imagine the urgency and the potential for Lizzie's life to be on the line? That's high-stakes drama right there. Chicago Fire could also take a page from shows like The Rookie, which has created exciting action sequences for LAFD's Bailey in situations such as an out-of-control hostage situation, where people desperately need emergency medical care.